Hi, this is Xane Daniel. I wanted to thank you so much for participating in this meditation and activation. This is not just a guided meditation, but it is an activation. I work with an extra-dimensional collective called the Hathors. They're very powerful, and by listening to the sound of my voice, you're being activated by the Hathors, and then peppered throughout this meditation, you'll receive very specific, targeted energy healing through activations. And how these activations work is I will say, breath in. And when I do, you'll take a nice big deep breath and you'll hold it at the top and you'll wait for me to say the word awaken. And then you can exhale. But it will be loud, so don't be too surprised when it bursts into your ears. This is the signal that will send a high burst of energy to accomplish whatever it is that we're trying to accomplish. And as with all high vibrational energy activations or attunements, it's important for you to know that this can result in a little bit of a recovery period. So don't be surprised if you feel extra tired or extra wide awake. Drink plenty of water after you listen to this. And this recovery period could actually take a couple of days for you to get over. But understand that if you do experience a recovery period, you've gone through quite the transformation. To use the Monday meditations as intended, I invite you to listen to each one all week, every day, until the next Monday meditation releases, and then use that one every day for a week. Each time you listen to them, they will become more and more integrated into the amazing being that you already are. Okay, take a nice big deep breath and relax. Relax as you exhale. Feel yourself sinking into the bed, the chair, or the floor. Even picture yourself being pulled into it, like your part of your body has intersected with the surface that you're laying on or sitting on. Because we're not talking about the 3D body this time. We're talking about the mind, and we're talking about your higher self, your energy field. Because you've been dealing with someone in your life who has been a problem. They're close to you, and they've probably been a part of your life for a long time. And they think they know what's best for you. But maybe that was true at one point, but it's no longer true now. Because what's actually happening is that they're the ones who are suffering, or the one who is suffering. And they're actually starting to pin that suffering onto you. And in a codependent sort of relationship, that's how it works. They need you to be suffering in order for them to feel okay. Because if you're suffering, then they need you. But if you're not suffering, then all of a sudden they're left behind, they're no longer needed, and so they feel alone and worthless. It's easy to forget this when that person is causing problems, when they're bringing out your worst. And this is often the case, is that as you ascend and as you see the world as this beautiful place, and as you know that you are this powerful being of light, these sorts of relationships can pull you back into your previous 3D existence. All the programming that you'd been unwinding all of a sudden fires back up. And you go back into old habits and old patterns because the familiarity of dealing with this individual is so strong. It so distracts you from this new version of yourself that you know you truly are, but you're dragged back in over and over again, each and every time, because you haven't been able to break free of that previous programming. And one of the reasons that we do this is because we were suffering before. And that individual was right. Maybe they did have your best interests in mind, and maybe they were somewhat helpful at one point, maybe before you even knew better. But their brand of helping you has turned into something where it's actually somewhat selfish. They're actually trying to help themselves. So there's a couple of different ways to approach a situation like this. You could maybe remove them from your life entirely so that you never speak to them or interact with them again. But for many, that isn't possible because they are integrated into your life. Maybe they're family, or they're an ex, and there's still shared custody of something, of an animal, children. And so they're still a part of your world, even though you'd prefer them not to be. So just tossing them aside isn't always an option. So instead, you're constantly reminded of your old self. You're constantly actually witnessing your old self, because anytime you interact with them, you go back to that old programming. So what are you trying to do in this situation? Are you trying to still fix the person who we're talking about? Or are you trying to discover that you don't need to do something like that, that you are not dependent on them anymore, that you are not, that their happiness and their experience and their satisfaction is actually no longer relevant to yours? Because it could be that that codependency actually went both ways, and that this individual, when they were suffering, you were there to help them, and that made you feel good. That made you feel better. So these sorts of experiences, these sorts of people in our lives are constant reminders of who we once were and who we would rather be moving forward. It's been said by many that you know you're enlightened when you can go back home and live with your parents, because they will push all of your buttons and they will test you in all kinds of ways and talk about going back to old programming. You were a child most of the time that you lived with them. You were all the aspects of yourself. You were the impatient one. You were the immature one. You were the difficult to get along with one. You were also the wonderful, wondrous child version of yourself too. But more often than not, they remember those versions of you, and they treat you as though you are still a child. This sort of relationship takes a lot of deprogramming to come out and be your true being of light self. It's no different than in this case. So every time that you have to interact with this person, you have the opportunity to test your enlightenment, to move beyond that old programming and to move into that being of light version of yourself, even when you're around them or interacting with them. When you can do this, you've really come far. You've really accomplished a lot. But most of the time, your happiness is too tied into another person. we rely on external sources to give us happiness, when instead we can completely rely on that within ourselves. So being able to see and love yourself unconditionally at all times, even if you do go back into old programming, even if you do go back into feeling shameful or giving them a hard time or making their lives miserable because they're making your life miserable, even if you go into those old habits, to still love yourself anyway and recognize, oh, I'm still not completely there yet. Because if you think about it, you can bring the positivity to that relationship. Maybe they can't because they're dependent on you being miserable, so they're going to do whatever they can to make you as unhappy as possible. Whether they realize it or not, this can happen at a subconscious level. So what if you brought positivity and only positivity to this relationship? There's a number of things that can happen. They might start to become positive as well. That's your best situation. But sometimes they'll get worse and try to drag you down even more. And in those situations, that is your big test. That divine being of light that you are can still shine through. And one of my favorite ways to do this, when they're really bringing you down, when they're really getting you down, and you're worried about them or the situation, or worried about what they think of you, or worried about, crap, I'm back into my old programming, is to actually observe them from the perspective of their higher self. Can you see them as their higher self sees them? With all their flaws and all, their higher self loves them unconditionally. They are absolutely perfect from the perspective of their higher self. The other way to do this is to, especially if they're abusive in some way, narcissists come into mind. Because a narcissist will do whatever they can to bring a rise out of you, because it feeds their need to feel important, to be able to influence you, and to bring you down to their level so that they're not alone in their misery. When they're really giving you that difficult time and you just can't see past it because those old patterns have come back, one of my favorite ways to handle it is to see them as the greatest comedian you've ever met. Oh my gosh, look at them try this again. They're using their old tactics. Wow, and it used to work. But it doesn't anymore because they're hilarious. All these things that they say, how they don't listen to me, how they don't respond correctly, that they always try to fool me or to trick me, to divert me from getting to my point, or whatever it might be. All of those tactics, all of that effort, just to try to make themselves feel superior to me or feel better about themselves. It's kind of funny, really, when you think about it, that how much effort goes into that, when actually they could just relax and be cool. But no, they don't realize how to do that. They haven't figured that out yet. Instead, the only tactics they know are the same old tactics they've used over and over again. And also, when you start to recognize those things, you don't have to go back into that old programming. This is your opportunity to see it. Say, oh my gosh, they're doing it again. I'm not going to go back into this. And each time you recognize it, it'll get easier and easier for you to pull away, to stay in a peaceful state, a peaceful place, even when they're pushing all your buttons and trying to rile you up. Talk about powerful. If you're able to keep your cool at their worst, then there's nothing that can get you down. And now they've become your greatest teacher. They're no longer a pain in your side. They're no longer someone that you don't want to have to interact with anymore. They're actually incredible teachers that have taught you how to be at peace in the hardest of scenarios. So what I'd like for you to do right now is to picture this person. And I want you to picture them kind of at their worst, when they're pushing your buttons, when they're trying to get a rise out of you, when they're doing that same old thing that they've been doing for so long, whether they realize it or not. You can picture their face. You can picture their tone of voice. You can picture kind of how powerful they are, or how powerful you've allowed them to be. How much you've given them your power. And when you give them your power, they love it. They're going to keep doing it. Whenever you've given them your power, they'll feel it. They know it, whether they know it consciously or not. And we're very practiced at knowing, oh, that's how I got my power last time. That's how I stole their power last time. I just have to do the same thing again. We're like dogs. We learn through positive and negative reinforcement. When you give your power away, that person is being trained. They're being trained how to take your power. And so they're going to keep using the same tactic over and over and over again as long as it works. Only when it stops working can you finally break free of the pattern. So when you see them in your vision right now of them using their worst tactics on you, you can tear it apart and see, oh my gosh, yep, I do the same thing every single time. So this is your opportunity to break free of that. And so what I want you to do as you picture them in this pose, this expression, this tone of voice, I want you to see them surrounded by this glowing light, white or golden light. They're almost now obscured because the light is so bright. And that light represents their purpose in your life. Their purpose in your life is to teach you how to overcome this, how to not give your power away anymore. This thing that you've seen as such a negative for so long is now an incredible positive. You have discovered the secret to that relationship. And now, all you've got to do is remember this when it happens again. So keep picturing them in this pose, with this tone of voice, the facial expression, and shining a beacon of light. Breath in. Ahoy! You can thank them for what they've given to you today. What they've been trying to give to you maybe for years. But you haven't seen it until this moment. I wouldn't probably give them a call right now and say, thank you for being a jerk all this time, because it's made me who I am. But you can still appreciate them for all that they've done for you. And you know what? Once you see this and you have stepped into your power, then they will see you completely differently. They'll try their tactics and it won't work. They'll try it again and it won't work. It might take many times because they've got a huge pattern, a long history of being able to do their same thing to you over and over again. But eventually one day they'll just go, what the heck? I've got to take a different approach. And that different approach will probably be to rise up to your level. And that thing that I talked about at the very beginning of this, where you've been wanting to help them, will finally be accomplished. I would like for you to also, for a moment, think of yourself as that being of light. Think of yourself glowing and shining that onto everyone that you meet, not just this individual, but on everyone. As you walk around life in public places, shine this light onto others and you'll see a facial expression change. You might even see their energy field change. And their day will be brightened, and perhaps even their life. That's what you're here to do. That's what you're capable of. That's what your power allows you to do. And as you see yourself as this incredible glowing being, I want you to smile, because this is the true you. Breath in. Oi! When you're ready to be this shining example, when you're ready to break the programming and start over again with this person in your life who's been giving you all this trouble for months and maybe years, maybe your entire life. When you're ready to see them as the greatest comedian, to see them as suffering and trying to get power because they can't get it anywhere else. They can't find it within themselves. And when you're ready to step into your own power, which allows them to finally have to step into theirs instead of trying to take other people's. When you're ready for all of this, then you can open your eyes. Thanks for participating in this meditation. Please leave a comment below and let me know what you thought. Did it help? I do one of these every Monday. So my recommendation is to listen to this each day until the next one releases. Thank you again. I love you unconditionally, and I'll see you in the next video.